Good morning, Zuador people, Zuador community, Mestre Vibes, Mestre Sukuri coming to you from Tokyo, Japan. This week, I have something that is really close to my heart and very special for all of you guys. This week, my nephew is in town. Most of you know him. Ta-chan! Yay!
Hey, everybody.
How does it feel to be back in Japan after, 2.5 years, maybe?
Almost 2 years. Yeah, it feels great to be back and feel a lot of love and support from my family, like my tio right here. And just to hang out with everybody and enjoy home for a little bit before I go back to the States.
And we have a very lovely guest. He's here with his significant other, Meredith, who is one of the most loveliest young ladies I've met in a long time, and just really happy she's here. Guys, most of you here on Patreon, especially here on Mestre Vibes, all know that Ta-chan. I'll give you a little bit background on why I call him my nephew. I was just telling them the story last night because it was so funny. So Tatsuya started capoeira when he was about 8 years old. And at the time, it was just him and Ruya and Kazuki, maybe like 3 or 4 other kids, not the 60, 70 kids we have now. And it was a very close relationship with these guys because there was so few students who were kids. And a lot of times Brazilians would visit me, and every time Tatsuya would sing or say something, they were like, wow, his accent is perfect. Is he Brazilian? And trying to explain a lot of times to Brazilians about Ta-chan, no, he's just a really gifted kid, a really smart kid, and works really hard. They couldn't understand it. So I just said, oh, he's my nephew. Oh, that makes sense. And it was just so easy to understand for most people. So it stuck. And the fact of the matter is, Ta-chan is become more than my real, like, more than blood. He's my nephew, and I love him with all my heart. So today, I want Ta-chan to just, reflect a little bit on capoeira when he was a kid and when he started, and maybe we'll have some fun stories because we were talking about this last night. And then, I really want to catch everybody up on what he's been doing since he went to the United States, because it's important that not only Capoeira Zoador here and what I do as a mestre is teaching capoeira, but being a community figure, a father figure, a mentor, and anything I can do. So, Ta-chan, what do you remember about capoeira when you started Capoeira Zoador? And of course, you can give any anecdotes about how I was. You got full range. Hit it.
Yeah. So what I remember most is, like Sukuri already mentioned, it was only a few kids at the beginning. He was pretty hard on us at the beginning. We would come in, and like any bad behaviors, we would have timeout on the side of the tatami. 1,000 kicks every day, and he's gotten softer over the years, I think. But that's what I remember probably the most. And then one of my earliest kind of memories is when we went to Odaiba for the show where there was a TV coverage.
Oh yeah,
if you remember,
that was Bloomberg. We got a show, and we did it was like maybe Contra Mestre Kalani, Mestre Linguiça, and Ruya, and maybe 4 or 5 other people. I know Contra Mestre Disco was there too. So. And
I remember Mi-chan. She was like 5 months old, and Na-chan had her, in her arms, and we just did a show. And I still have that CD like in my house. My dad has it.
Oh wow! If I can get that, I would definitely put it up on YouTube. That was so old school. Well, maybe there's got to be.
That's like me after like maybe half a year of within half a year of starting capoeira here.
I'm sure there's somebody who has a DVD player and we can rip it. So if you can get that to me, I'll put it up because I think we could see who was in there. That was some old school stuff.
Yeah, you can see everybody from back in the day, but you can also see like Ryuya and me in the Hwada. Like, we were like 8 and 9 years old or something. Like,
yeah,
playing
you guys
capoeira.
were fantastic. I mean, just prodigies. I remember stretching you guys out, and like I don't do that anymore. Like where I would try to stretch the kids out. Like, here, let me push your legs back as hard as you can. Oh, look, you can touch your feet to your head. Don't worry, from behind, like in an arch. But like I remember though, like the back then it was like, everyday warm up was like 500 kicks or
Yes.
even more. But at the time, the adults were the same, right? I mean, it was mostly the Capoeira Zuador started with mostly adults and mostly foreigners, right? We had a lot of like people who were already black belts in other martial arts. So it was a very intense training. I remember every weekend it was just like somebody was like, oh, I got a bruise here, or my leg hurts here, or whatever. And like I remember swinging and like palmadas and cotoveladas, and it was just really magnificent. I enjoyed that time.
And this is something that, like you talked about family and stuff like that, but I really felt like, especially because I started really young, 7 or 8 years old, I just felt like here there was a lot of sense of community and belonging that I felt like from a very early, in terms of my life journey, very early. And so that was something that I had like growing up. And like obviously the community here, like people come and go, but there was always a community and a family here, which did a lot to shape me as a person.
In what ways do you think being exposed to me, especially because Japan, we always talk about how back then there was so few foreigners around. Like, I mean, I remember my son Dede, right? Oh, quick note, when my son Dede comes back from Africa, I'm going to be doing a podcast with him in Japanese for sure. And that's going to be a good experience because it's important to share life experiences and the positive movement forward. What can you think of now that like you got from Capoeira or you got from being involved in a Capoeira Academy community, as you mentioned about community and family? What aspects influenced your life?
We were just talking about this last night, but in terms of the circumstances that I grew up in, there were a lot of people, like you said about diversity and things like that. There was a lot more diversity within the Capoeira Zuador like community that doesn't exist elsewhere in Japan and in Tokyo. And so I grew up with kind of a lot of access to these people who grew up in different backgrounds and different they had a very different life. They're coming from a diverse background, and so I was able to internalize that from very early on, which I think really influenced me to go out there and explore the world. I wasn't really, from a very young age, I knew that I was gonna try to get out and see the world, study abroad, things like that. It really, I think, changed my view and opened my mind to feel like I was a part of something bigger than just myself. I wasn't surrounded by just the people who look like me or the people who grew up in a similar environment. I was surrounded by people from a lot of different backgrounds, and that was really good for me.
I remember Dede told me one time, I think he was like late junior high, and he had said, most of my friends at my school, outside of the foreigner who comes to school to give like the once a week English class, like they've never talked to a foreigner. I remember his one of his favorite is like, most Japanese don't know what a tortilla is, and I was just laughing. I was like,
that's true.
It's and the diversity that like people have always said coming into Capoeira Zuador Academy is like stepping outside of Japan. And I've always thought, people always said, why did you come to Japan? Why did you come to Japan? And I really felt always, I say the same thing for 20 years, is I didn't come to Japan. I came to Tokyo, as I would have gone to like London or New York as a very international metropolis. So I thought there would be a lot more diversity before I came here. But then I realized, it takes time, right? All countries take time. Actually, next week for my podcast, I'm thinking about talking about my take on what is racism in Japan. Mm-hmm. And as a cultural anthropologist and also as a person who's lived here for 23 years. And I'm going to be mentioning how it's completely different. You can't just put a word from a language on another culture. You can't just say, oh, all Japanese are racist, all racism in Japan, because we're looking at it from a very Western view, and a view that is constructed from an American cultural experience. So
Right.
we have to look at it very different. And I think a lot of people will be interested next week. So just a quick promo on that. Next week, I'll be talking about racism in Japan and how it functions and how I see it as a cultural anthropologist and a master who's been working here for 20, 23 years. When you went to the States, you said you had checked out a couple of capoeira places. What was that experience like? I know because you got really busy with college and everything. First of all, quick note, my nephew here got a full scholarship for undergrad because he's a genius. And I don't know where he gets that from. It's probably from his dad, but he gets all this cool stuff from me. So what was it like going to America at first? And did you come across capoeira when you first got there?
Yeah, so I got a full scholarship, but I went to a small state school in Missouri for undergrad. There wasn't a ton of capoeira around me there, and initially I was looking at trying to, for example, start a capoeira club at Truman State University, which is where I was at. But it turns out that a lot of things are challenging, obviously, because of busy and stuff like that. But I think those are, kind of excuses. What I really missed about Capoeira Zodor was this sort of sense of community and like a lot of people who are, it's not just about capoeira or doing a certain martial art. It's about just the lifestyle of, kind of coming here and training really hard and trying to get better at something. That is kind of like an attitude about life that not a lot of people had. Even in college, when they're supposed to be, learning stuff, there was a lot of people who are like majoring in something that they don't care about, and they're just kind of cruising through life. And there wasn't this like, I was always here, training, and I was like, I'm gonna get better. Today, I'm gonna try to master this move or whatever. And so it was very hard to kind of cultivate that sort of environment. Meanwhile, kind of doing the college thing, right? So there was a lot of difficulty with that.
A lot of people have told me, like, once they leave Japan and they've tried other capoeira groups, it's really hard to find something because they want that same feeling. They assume that's part of capoeira, but a lot of groups have different ways of teaching, different styles, and it's really important for me, always have been. Like, one thing I realized early on, part of what I do here is giving that sense of community, giving that sense of people of feeling a part of something. Like I've mentioned in other podcasts that, like, I feel a lot of foreigners who come to Japan, especially let's say a first world country foreigners, like white Americans. I mean, white people, African American people from Africa. Well, I want to say more people from first world countries. They get disconnected to what's down to earth, and a lot of times that's why we were always saying, like, oh, that guy looks kind of weird in Shibuya or something, because they've kind of like not connected to reality. Like, there's no family barbecues, there's no, you're not around kids, so you're swearing all the time, and it's really interesting how important that is here, especially as a foreigner. And when you're from a first world country as a foreigner here in Japan, you're really like less than like 10% of all the foreigners here, which is mostly Chinese, Vietnamese now come a lot because they get the visa for working. And all this comes back to that feeling of community, because the Vietnamese create community. The Brazilians create community. The Chinese create community. The Koreans create community. And a lot of the first world country foreigners tend to just drink together, and it's not really a community. So it's important that at least when people come through here, I'm not speaking for everybody, but come through here, that they can feel that. Mm-hmm. So now, what are you up to? What are you doing? What year are you in? And what's the plan?
So after graduating from Truman State University, I moved to Colorado. So I'm in a fully funded PhD program in astrophysics at the University of Colorado, Boulder.
I don't think I can even spell astrophysics.
But that's what I'm doing. I'm in year 5 as of this fall semester. My plan is to graduate in about a year and a half or so. Just for
everybody, how old are you?
I'm 25 right now.
Year 5 of a PhD program at 25. And he can kick Sheldon's butt.
But yeah, so that's the plan. And so after I get my PhD, I really want to go and teach astrophysics and do astrophysics research, kind of continue to be in that academic environment, that community. And, one of the things that I really focus on is the fact that...
I'm holding back. So will you be doing any advanced research on your favorite planet, Uranus? I'm sorry, I had to say it. Disco, that was for you. Mate, Adam, that was for you. It had to be done. Okay, so back to seriousness.
So I would ideally want to do a professorship somewhere at a college and do research and teach astrophysics.
Wow. Do you see yourself teaching in Colorado, or do you see yourself, like, I know that as a graduate person, once you leave, it's really like you go to the conferences and that's where you network and that's where you start making people. So I mean, have you seen anything or heard anybody's like, well, would you be interested post here, or it's still too early before you graduate?
Yeah, so actually last year I went to UCLA for a couple of months and I did research with somebody else there who's not my primary advisor. That's kind of a part of that networking effort. And so I'm kind of looking for, so obviously once you get your PhD, it's not immediately you go into a professorship somewhere. You have to like do what's called a postdoc, like research position for at least a few years. Slave labor, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, like you get paid a little bit more than you do as a grad student, but not too much more. Yeah, so that's kind of to build up your resume, your CV, and try to convince somebody to hire you as a professor somewhere. But like I am kind of starting that process of looking to expand my network. So we're thinking spring 2025, right? So just May of 2025. Like a year and a half away. Wow, and I will be going to that if anybody wants to go with me for the graduation. Yeah, everybody should come. It's going to be great. Try to get Disco to go. Things have changed a lot. Like, what you were saying earlier about like how I used to be a lot more tougher and stricter. And I realized, there's been a metamorphosis from teaching adults as my primary goal in Japan all the way to now, which were like kids are the main. And right now, having adults is just a blessing. It's like my time during Capoeira, because generally I'm just, always focused on teaching the kids. And I think having had you and Ruya especially, that I really had two great kids to try at first, right? Like I didn't really know how to deal with kids and stuff. And, I'm never going to say like, I'm sorry for anything because I did my best and I can't do, but I really still, there's a lot of things that I did with you guys that I still do now because, most important for me teaching the kids now is really about building their character, right? Personal responsibility, and that they can have character to move forward in life. Having from when you moved to the United States and now, which is 8 years later, what would you say is your biggest change as an adult or as a young adult? Yeah, so one thing that I would say is just, people talk about like culture shock and things like that. But what I really realized was that, there's a lot more to think culture shock, I guess, than just moving from Japan to a different country like the United States. It was more about like all of these, when people say homesick, one of the things that I missed the most was not, the place or anything like that. It was more the people that, that for example, the Capoeira community, the people that I grew up with here is just like, I didn't really realize, I think because I was a kid, that it's not something that just comes to you. I was very lucky and a privilege to have this community growing up. And so what I realized, I think, and one of the things that I had to learn more and more growing up was that, once you're an adult, you kind of have to create that opportunity for yourself. So I had to really be careful about the people I surround myself with, and build my own support system around me, because it wasn't, to me, it was like I just started capoeira here when I was 8 years old, and I just had this community. It was just kind of handed to me. But abroad, it wasn't the case. So, especially when you're, 18, starting college, there's a lot of, shitty people around you. But you gotta find the people that are, that you can genuinely see yourself being supported, being respected, being valued, and you have to hold those people. And that's kind of how I try to cultivate a community and support system around me.
Man, that's exactly what I've done. The only thing I've gotten good at is getting rid, or not getting rid, but cutting off relationships. Like a lot of people who aren't around anymore because the toxicity of that. You need to have people around you who are going to be mental support, emotional support, and in a reciprocal way.
Right.
And I think it's really, really important that people understand that as we grow, is that we have to be able to reflect and go, okay, what's wrong with me? What can I improve? And how can I improve the people around me? Because you are a sum total of your friends. And I really realize that more as I get older, more than ever. Okay, to finish off, do you have any good Mestre Sucuri or Mestre Linguiça or any capoeira stories that you remember as a kid? Would you like to share anything funny or something like how I was or how Mestre Linguiça was or how any of the people here were? If you don't think of anything, that's fine. I just thought it might be a funny antidote.
The only... it's just on my mind because you were telling the story yesterday, but the only story I can think of is the ice cream story right now, which says more about just the nature of kids.
Yeah.
But
which I wasn't used to at all, right? Like I never got that kind of spoiled when I was a kid. I mean, we had a chance to do a lot of places to enjoy. You met a lot of amazing samba percussionists when you were a kid. I mean, you were exposed to like Dede and Michan. I mean, you got godfathers and uncles here who are like world famous percussionists, and I mean, I've always felt that was awesome. So that's a great thing. But yeah, we'll tell the ice cream story later. Okay, guys, it's just a little bit of fun before tomorrow night. Remember, tomorrow night is vinyl night. Tomoe-san's going to be doing 80s and 90s. So get your Madonna, get your Michael Jackson, and get your Prince, and get your Billy Idol already, because we are going to have some fun. Starts at 6 o'clock. From 4 o'clock is Mestre Linguiça's special berimbau workshop. If you haven't played berimbau in a while and you want to check up on that, come on in. Zoador Tribe member tier. Everything is, the workshop is free. If you're not a Zoador Tribe member, it's 2,500 yen. And the entrance at the event is 500 yen. All drinks are 300 yen for adults, 100 yen for kids. So everything you do supports us. This event tomorrow night is produced and supported by your guys' wonderful support here on Patreon. Guys, I can't thank you enough. Tachan, thank you for joining me. We're going to do the Japanese next. I love you, mijo, and let's have a great, great day. Guys, Mestre Sucuri, Capoeira, Tokyo, Mestre Vibes.